And as usual, it's the person who has least distance to travel that's late. I'm sure Councillor Radford will be along at some
He comes on
point.
a tram, so hopefully that's working.
He's on the tram, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do the top end of the agenda. So first of all, welcome to what is the second formal meeting of the Housing and Land Committee. There must be some people who are substitutes here this morning, so I thought we'd perhaps go around the table and introduce ourselves. First of all, I'm Councillor Tricia Gilby. I'm the leader of Chesterfield Borough Council. I'm one of the 2 Derbyshire District Council representatives on the EMCCA board, and I'm really pleased to be the portfolio lead for Housing and Land for EMCCA as well. Barry, please.
Thank you. I'm the interim Housing and Land Lead Programme Manager for EMCCA.
Steve.
Morning, I'm Steve Pickering from North East Derbyshire District Council.
Hello, I'm Councillor Linda Woodings from Nottingham City Council.
Morning, I'm Steve Guthrie. I'm the Strategic Planning Manager at Derbyshire County Council.
Morning, I'm Councillor David Elsden, Derbyshire County Council.
Morning, Nick Adams, substituting for Councillor Carol Wood from Derbyshire County Council, and I'm the, probably not relevant, I'm the Chairman of Derbyshire County Council.
I thought I recognised your face from Remembrance Sunday. Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Christine Seaton and I'm the Senior Manager for Housing Growth from Homes England.
Hi, I'm Becky Farr. I'm Head of Markets, Partners and Places in the Midlands at Homes England.
Good morning, David Arnold, Head of Planning at Nottinghamshire County Council.
And Councillor Walker Gurley from Nottinghamshire County Council, Economic Development and Asset Management Portfolio Holder.
Stuart Matthews, I'm substituting for Barry Answer from Nottinghamshire County Council. Sorry.
Councillor Lee Brazier, Newark and Sherwood District Councillor, and I'm one of the 2 Nottinghamshire District representatives.
Councillor Neil Wilson from Derby City Council.
Emma Powley, Governance at EMCCA.
Tommy Shaw, I work in Governance at EMCCA.
And I'm Edward Highfield. I'm the Executive Director for the Place Portfolio at EMCCA.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Mr Baptiste, who is a member of the public that's going to be asking a question this morning. Apologies for absence. We have received some, haven't we?
Yeah,
probably indicated by the
yeah.
So there's nobody else to mention, is there?
There's just Councillor Shiraz Khan has sent his apologies as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so any declarations of interest, matters arising in the committee's business this morning? None? Okay. The minutes of our previous meeting that was held on the 17th of September, do I have a mover that they're a correct record of that meeting?
Happy to.
You were there?
I was, oh no, actually,
Yeah.
sorry, I can't do that because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I did watch it, but
Sorry?
no, sorry.
You weren't there, yeah. So, Councillor Wilson, you were there, yeah.
I was on leave, sorry.
We've got another member of the committee.
I was there as a substitute.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 2 legitimate movers, everybody in agreement. They're accepted. The first item on the agenda is the update on the Brownfield Housing Fund, and this report summarises the progress that's been made in the delivery of the funds that EMCCA's received. And as you'll hear from Barry, it's quite a complex set of movements. Have I missed something? Oh, sorry. Apologies. It's because I've got the old again. So I'm really sorry, Mr Baptiste. I should have covered the public question in the agenda. So would you like to ask the board your question?
Sure. I think I presented a series of questions to Tommy, so I've not actually got a record of those. Can you read them out on my behalf.
Chair,
Got a
do you
supplementary copy.
have a copy of the questions?
I do, yeah.
I'll bring these over to you, is that all right?
I can't, that's my answer.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah, yeah, we'll get it up on here. Just one second.
We'll tear it off. Thank you.
So, the question is, Pathway House Solutions are a Nottingham-based community housing organisation. We're currently working with Housing 21 to develop co-housing schemes for people on low to modest incomes in Nottingham and Derby. We recognise that the housing crisis faced by our citizens has been acknowledged by government in its ambitions to create 1.5 million additional homes. In view of these challenges, community-led housing, supported by the NPPF and other measures, offers a combined authority an alternative model of affordable housing delivery that can contribute to its own housing targets. With EMCCA committed to an inclusive growth strategy, allocation of brownfield housing fund resources, a retrofit strategy, a newly established technical officers group, and the recent launch of the social and affordable housing programme, will the combined authority, 1, be committing to a strategy and housing delivery partnerships such as community-led housing, which has been adopted by other local authorities to bring forward additional housing supply, and 2, engage and seek advice from community-led housing organisations in addition to other key stakeholders to contribute towards regional housing delivery outcomes. Shall I bring this back?
Well, thank you very much for coming along this morning, Mr. Baptiste, and for your question. Community-led housing is an important element of the overall delivery portfolio for increasing the total number of homes delivered in the EMCCA region. The £20 million funding allocated by the government, which was announced in March this year to such initiatives, underline the support of the importance of engaging local communities and addressing local needs. EMCCA's housing strategy is currently in the early stages of evolution, and we are of course happy to engage with and seek advice from such groups as yourselves and other key stakeholders, and understand from you how they might link to EMCCA's plans, but also how you can support us and we can support you. It's the intention of this Housing and Land Committee to ensure that all interested parties will have the opportunity to engage in helping to shape our regional housing strategy. Obviously, as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, this is only the second meeting of this committee. Although EMCCA set up its other committees when it was established 18 months ago, this committee, because of the complex nature of its work and actually the importance of recruiting relevant members of staff, wasn't actually set up until May this year, and didn't have its first formal meeting until September. Edward himself wasn't appointed to the authority until the middle of this year. Barry has been here with us right from the interim days when we were just a twinkle in the previous government's eyes. So he's been sort of carrying everything from that point. But hopefully we hope to be able to commence developing the housing strategy for EMCCA once recruitment to some key other posts have taken place, and we hope that will happen in next year in 2026. But as you know yourself, my office, and we've been liaising with getting dates in my diary so that I can meet with you, and I gather that that's now been achieved. So I look forward to seeing you again soon, and you having the opportunity to explain to myself about more about your organisation and what you do and what your future aims are. So thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
The supplementary question, I think, is, would the committee be interested in Pathway House Solutions and Housing 21 delivering a presentation about community-led housing at a future committee meeting?
Yeah. Well, shall you and I meet first, and then I'll liaise with the officers about how we do that. Is that okay? Right, thank you very much. You are quite welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we understand if you've got other things to happen. Okay then, so moving on to the next part of the agenda. It is indeed the update on the Brown Housing Bill Fund now, so I'll hand over to Barry, who's going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'll take the report as read and just identify the highlights, if I might, and take any questions thereafter. Members will recall that the first allocation of £16.8 million given to EMCCA is currently fully committed. It is currently on target to deliver about 16.7 of that outcome for about 1,300 homes, with an average cost of a little under 13k, just about 12,800. Of that, one contract's already been executed, which is the Miller Avenue, Edale Road one, Chesterfield, which I can update members on here. We're expecting to execute 2 further agreements today, which is the Balderton, Flowserve Balderton and Alder Close Shirebrook schemes, which is a good progress, and we're targeting another 4 to include Chesterfield Road, Leviers Court, Bath Street, Ilkeston and Old Whittington, Chesterfield for December. So there is good progress been made on that. Since this report was written, I can advise members that the scheme at Arnside has now, the applicant has withdrawn from the process. So we are potentially $1 million down on those numbers and 113 homes, which we will obviously seek a replacement for from the remaining schemes that we have to consider. In respect of the second fund, or the extension fund, if you will, the total allocated to us there was £19.7 million. We currently have about 10 schemes which have been approved by the Mayor and Board to be in advanced stages of due diligence for. They currently total a little under 14 million, and the average cost per home there is slightly higher, reflecting the nature of that fund at about 20,000. So we still have some headroom available in that scheme for schemes to come forward. Many of the schemes which are in the second allocation are affordable housing schemes and reflect a really significantly targeted approach towards that end by engaging with local authorities and registered providers, but the scheme is open to all comers that meet the fund requirements. We're working towards submissions of full business cases by the end of December and by mid-January at the latest, which will allow us sufficient time to undertake the external evaluation through the agents that we employ to do that, and where appropriate seek final board approvals to enter into the agreement. So it remains on track to deliver. We have a little headroom left in Fund 2. We will need to find a replacement for the lost scheme at Arnside in Scheme 1. You know, between 20 and 30 contracts to exchange this side of March next year in order to meet the government deadlines for having everything contracted by March 26. Needless to say, there's a great deal of work going on behind the scenes. We've bolstered the resources with our external agents, we've bolstered our legal support, helping us with the actual execution of those grant agreements. But it's an ever-moving feast, as you can see with me updating to you today, some movements from a short time ago when the report was written. But a very positive outlook, and we will continue to work towards a successful outcome. We continue to hunt around for schemes that will be a fit for the fund and are open to utilise the existing headroom should any schemes exist. So I think I'll probably leave it at that, Chair, and take any questions on anything specifically that people want to raise.
Thank you. Before I take any questions, can I just remind members of the board that there was an exempt appendix to this report. It's Appendix A. So whilst we're in public session, can you please refrain from referring to any detailed information in what you say. When we move into the exclude section, we can cover anything then if you feel the need to. So we'll take Linda and somebody else indicated, did they? And one over there. So Linda first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, I think it would be useful to keep a breakdown as to whether the new homes fall under the classification of affordable or not. Only because obviously the commitment to build 1.5 million homes, I think it's hoped that a lot of them will actually be affordable homes under the official classification. And I don't know if we have that breakdown at the minute. I'm assuming I've not been able to read the appendix because I've had my eyes done, but I'm assuming that's like the cost benefit analysis and the financial side of it. Is that right? So I don't need to ask a question about that, but I just wondered if that's something that EMCCA should think about highlighting.
Okay, well thank you. So to address your question very specifically, that we can give a breakdown at any point of the total number that the scheme is supporting, of which are affordable homes. I should, for everybody's benefit, identify that the delivery of affordable homes wasn't a scheme requirement.
No.
And therefore, if a scheme fits the requirements of the fund, it is capable of being supported. So the schemes that are supported by EMCCA are a mix of private schemes and those that are delivering both private homes and affordable homes, as well as schemes which are 100% affordable. So it's tenure blind in that respect. Yeah. So just to clarify the point, it doesn't affect the evaluation of the scheme from a technical point of view, whether it's delivering affordable or not, because it's a reflection of the planning consent that previous authorities have granted for the scheme. Because we're not part of the planning authority and we don't make planning decisions, ultimately the schemes come to us with a predetermined set of outcomes. But we are able to monitor how much of that is supporting the scheme. EMCCA is very driven to support the government's ambitions for the total number of homes built within the Parliament, with a particular emphasis on delivering affordable homes, which is why the second element of the top-up fund, if you will, has been focused insofar as we were able to on the affordable housing sector and supporting those schemes, and they're more significantly represented in that particular element of the fund than would have otherwise been the case. But I can certainly have those breakdowns available to you.
Thank you so much. Can I just have a quick follow-up question? Within our Nottingham local plan, we have it specified that for any housing developments over a certain size, 10% of those houses must be adaptable houses for people who need to use wheelchairs, who need larger bathrooms, wider doors, etc. And also we specify that a small proportion of each housing development are actually affordable housing, so that, on the development that was built just down the road from me, there is a row of affordable homes close to a lot of homes that would definitely not fall under that classification. And I mean, when I speak to groups of people with disabilities, for example, they say, you think ordinary members of the public have difficulty finding houses. You try being a disabled person and seeing how easy it is to get a suitable home. And so I wonder if in the future there might be, I don't know how you would actually do it, but like a possibility of building in those minimal requests into each housing development that comes forward. I know sometimes that the council, for example, will accept less Section 106 money, infrastructure money, as part of the payback because they've built either affordable homes or adaptable homes, which are slightly more expensive per unit, as part of the overall numbers. And it's sort of like, it feels like it's kind of like future-proofing developments as well. So I just wondered if that was something that might be considered in the future.
Yeah, happy to take that question. So I think you made some excellent points. Wheelchair access mobility standards, internal space standards are all super critical to the affordable housing sector and to the sorts of homes that registered providers want to maintain in the future. Their respective efficiency, how energy efficient they are, but also their internal space standards drive a lot of their income and their consideration of what represents good and bad from their perspective. I think it's, I'd make a distinction with the policy that is a planning policy, so Section 106, which you touched on, are planning requirements which remain the responsibility of the local planning authority, and each of those will differ depending upon the policies that are in the local plan which is in force at any given point in time. But as the Chairman has also identified that it's the intention of EMCCA to emerge a housing policy, and that housing policy, whilst it may not be statutory in its ability to bind subsequent planning applications, will offer a direction of travel for the sorts of schemes that are being supported by the combined authority. And I think good quality access, well designed, energy efficient, to some extent future-proofed, it should absolutely be in the wheelhouse of that which was regarded as supportable. So I do see a situation in the future where the housing policy could reflect those ambitions. But I think when you get into a mandating, they ought to be provided as a percentage of or as a contribution to. Those matters sit very firmly in the hands of the local planning authority, and we wouldn't probably want to intervene in that point. But there is a direction of travel, and that direction of travel is very much to support that type of accommodation and to support, increasing the amount of affordable housing that's ultimately been delivered, which is why we're working in very close partnership with colleagues at Homes England in the delivery of the next wave of the affordable housing grant, which we'll hear about shortly, to try and help shape regional strategies and regional approaches to how some of that fund is going to be used. So we can certainly take those comments on board, but I would expect to see it happening on an informal basis at least.
Yeah. And I think on an informal basis, the combined authorities are a really good way of sharing good practice across all local planning authorities, and some authorities have stressed some things in their planning conditions and others other things, and it'd be interesting to see how they map out and how we can cross-fertilise. But it's certainly important to ensure that that what's built meets the needs of the place in which they're being built and the people. So thanks very much for your questions, Councillor Woodings. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
Councillor Walker-Gailey.
Right, thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Linda. You took my questions away.
Sorry.
It's all right. I do have one more, though. Will the emerging SDS, Spatial Development Strategy, set out affordable housing rates?
So we are awaiting guidance from government, so we don't entirely know the specifics about what the SDS can and can't do. So I think it goes back to that territory Barry was talking about whether it's statutory and it's imposed, or whether it's more a very strong signal and something that we work together on a more informal basis. So I don't know the specific answer. What I am confident is that we will definitely talk about affordable housing. We will set the region's aspiration, and we will have conversations about how we can work together to try and make sure we achieve it. Because we all know currently it's not just the numbers game. We are broadly delivering the numbers of housing, but we're not delivering the mix, particularly around affordable. So the SDS will definitely talk about it. What I don't yet know is whether it's going to be a kind of a statutory thing, or whether it's going to be more of a kind of a partnership thing. So that, I think we'll know more once we see the guidance early next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Do old school sites categorise as a brownfield site? Old schools that have not been used, shall we say, for 10 years, do they come under the brownfield site?
Depending on which definition of brownfield you use, the answer is yes and no. I don't mean to be ambiguous about that, but if a footprint is covered by a building previously, it's generally considered to be brownfield site. It's been used before. So the school buildings themselves would be definitely fall within the remit of the fund. Okay. Where you have, and the reason I'm being careful is because there is an ambiguity to it, where you've got playing fields, and the playing fields have always been used for playing fields, so they've never had buildings occupying them or never been used for anything other than open land, they wouldn't fall within the definition of brownfield housing. In a situation where you had a school and a playing field, then the area of the site which was occupied by the buildings could be supported. The area of the site which was a playing field and had been used, unremittingly for that, probably wouldn't qualify under the terms of the fund for support on that element. So the answer is yes to both. Part of it would, but part of it is specifically excluded as recreational space.
And the second question, I've got three, is that we're given a grant of between 19 and 25,000 per unit.
Yeah.
Because my colleague here, the usual suspects in developers, in my opinion, have latched onto this 19 to 25,000 pound grants, particularly on brownfield sites. And the amount they're paying for the sites are virtually on par what the grants are per plot. I think that's a loophole that needs looking into a little bit, because they're basically getting if they are brownfield sites, and you've categorised what I'm talking about, they're virtually getting the sites for nothing with the grants they're getting, which increases the profit margin. And the third question is for what Mr Baptiste said. As somebody who was born and bred in a council house all his life, and I'm proud to have been born, all my brothers were, I generally think EMCCA should really work now on the same system of sites for social housing, for people to develop their lives and move forward in a community-based environment. Thank you, that's my three. Okay,
well, there's a couple of things there. So we've dealt with the brownfield bit, the size of the grant you referred to and the margins. So when an applicant applies for brownfield funding, generally speaking, the fund can only be deployed to support a development that would otherwise not happen. And so when it comes to us for evaluation, you cannot have a profit that would be market norms and then have grant been supplied to you as a top-up to that process. So there's something called subsidy control, which means that public funding can't be used to subsidise what would otherwise happen outside of that process. And generally with brownfield sites there's a viability gap, which is the difference between what it costs you to develop the site and the return that you're going to get. Now, depending on how badly contaminated or how difficult the site is to develop, that gap can be minus numbers, so the site's worth minus some sort of monetary value, or it could be still have a land value, but just requires some form of grant to bridge the gap to give the developer confidence enough to commit to the scheme. The schemes are scrutinised externally, and the numbers that are deployed against them are used as part of the contractual analysis that goes into the bid, and therefore they're scrutinised to test for realism and test for appropriateness and proportionality, and therefore none of the schemes that have been supported would have a level of return which exceeds public norms or public expectations on finance. So I'm confident that the fund is not supporting the worst kind of activity that you might be describing in your narrative. I think the market for land, though, is a matter between the landowner and the developer, and that is a dark art and a dark world where both parties are seeking the best outcome for themselves. So if you're a landowner, you never knowingly want to undersell anything. If you're a developer, everything costs twice as much as it used to, and therefore there's no money in the scheme. So whichever side of that conundrum you sit on, there's a negotiation to happen. That's not a matter for EMCCA to determine in this piece, because it comes to us as a finished article. So whatever the arrangements are with the developer and the house, whether it's an RP or a house builder and the landowner, are determined before they get to us. We don't actually say to people how much we can validate in support of the grant until we've evaluated the business case. So it would be very difficult to go in the knowledge that they're going to get a grant from us. At that point of negotiation, and control of the site is an important factor for us to enter into that debate with them. It's usually happened long before that point, so I think the member can take comfort that that doesn't happen here. And I think the final point, which was in community-led housing and the delivery of quality places, you know, if I could write a housing strategy in one word, it would be the design of really well-designed, place-led schemes that have a strong sense of identity and a strong sense of community. And I would apply that to any development that EMCCA seeks to support. So I absolutely endorse your views on that. It's about quality of design, but it's also about quality of placemaking. A lot of chat about what does placemaking mean. What it actually means is, if you live there, what's your lived experience? Is it a good place to live? Is it a balanced community? Does it give you a sense of respect and identity and community? And those are the sort of ingredients that generally make up good places, and that's what we're striving very hard to create where EMCCA funding has been used.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, lovely, yeah.
Good. Councillor Brazier.
Yeah, thank you. So it's just around the Arnside Road, obviously it's 1.1 million. So that's now been revoked from this. How confident are we that we will achieve that, given the tight timescales that we're looking at? And would we be looking for something like for like? Would we be looking at multiple sites potentially to achieve that 1.1 million? Because I recognise that 113 social housing properties or shared ownership properties are a lot to potentially lose out on, given that this is no longer in the scheme.
Yeah, so it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Would be a polite way of describing where we find ourselves. It's not impossible, but the timescales are narrowing with every passing week that we get to. So we will continue to look to replace that. It doesn't necessarily need to be like for like, so it doesn't need to be one for one.
Yeah.
We can make up that from an aggregation of schemes, and we are getting applications in all the time. So, you know, routinely in any week people are applying to the fund and seeking qualification of it. So because my glass is always half full rather than half empty, I'd love to be able to say to you I'm fairly confident that it will come in and we'll be able to replace it. We'll be certainly working very hard to do so. In reality, we are looking for schemes that have got consent, that have got landowner control, that have got reasonably advanced knowledge of costs and profiling. And we have a number of partners, including the registered providers and the local authorities that are partners for EMCCA, as well as the house building sector, and we're actively looking for schemes. So I'm positive that we'll find something, but there will come a point, and it will probably be in the very early new year, by which we've kind of had to close the gate on it because there won't be enough time to process it. But as it stands at the moment, there are a number of schemes that are in the ferment, and it's possible that one of those could drop in to support that as a replacement, so I remain confident.
Can I come back as well, Chair?
Yeah.
Okay. So are we able, with that 1.1 million, to roll it over into further down the line on the schemes, or would it be a clawback potentially of that funding?
So the rules at the moment are that if you don't commit the fund, then effectively the Treasury may ask for the money back.
Okay.
That they may change their view on that, and it's certainly within their gift to change their view, to extend it or enlarge the deadline available, or even offer some sort of flexibility on that. But I can only relate you to the scheme rules, and the scheme rules say if it's not contracted by then, it might not.
Yeah, just on that, I've said before, in many ways, this is exactly the sort of fund that we don't want to be delivering, really, because as you get closer and closer to that deadline, what can spend becomes more of a priority than what fits local priorities, which is not really what any of us wanted to do. But the alternative was to say no to the money and give it back to government. So, but as Barry said, really, just to add, Mayor Clare has written to the Minister responsible for this, asking for flexibility around the date to allow us to deliver a good quality pipeline rather than just be driven by the deadline. And we haven't had a response to that yet. The informal response has been no, there is no flexibility, but we hope and we will try as we get close to that deadline to demonstrate the pipeline that there are good quality schemes here, and in a sense if they do just give us a bit more flexibility they can have the outputs. But at the moment the answer is no, there is no flexibility, but we will keep asking the question.
Thank you.
Is there a sense that other combined authorities are facing a similar problem?
The problems that, well, I say the problems, the challenges we face, because it's nice to have the funding to be able to deploy in the first place, it's not a problem. The challenges we face are the same routinely, that the fit for the fund sort of requires on certain key ingredients like a planning consent that's been granted, like the ability to start within the timescales that are prescribed. The pipeline of sites across the East Midlands region is enormous, so we've got loads to do. We've got loads of opportunity to go at. And with, as Edward has alluded, with a more flexible approach to the fund, you could actually tailor some of these interventions to support schemes that have been planned by many of our partners over a much longer period of time. But what it actually requires is a consented scheme that's capable of being implemented in the narrow timelines, and the ability to advance a business case, which means you've probably got to own the site or control it. You need to have let or be close to securing finalisation on your build costs, and those things reduce the number of schemes that come into that hopper into a fairly narrow funnel. So everybody has got exactly the same issues with us. We would all love a bit more flexibility on the fund. Certainly my peers in other combined authorities are going through exactly those challenges at the moment.
Working in education.
We're all going slightly greyer by the day as a consequence, but it is what it is, and it's good to at least have the opportunity to get at it. So we welcome the fund. We welcome the opportunities to deploy it within the region. We'll keep doing so as long as we can.
Super.
Thank you. I don't want to be difficult, and also I understand it's not an obligation, but I do feel like the question's probably going to remain, and I wonder if I could request. So the previous government, I think their definition of affordable homes was 80% of market value. Could we clarify, is that our definition, is that the definition of affordable homes that we would use? And then also, if I could request, could we get the number that we've actually delivered, maybe sent out or circulated to all members? Is that possible? I know it might be a bit of work to do, but I feel like it would be beneficial for us to know the number.
Yeah, I can certainly make that available. Perhaps if you're comfortable, I'll bring it as a schedule to the next meeting, so that if the topic wants to be raised again, I'm quite happy for you to see that. It's very transparent activity. So to your second point, I'll make sure it's appended as a schedule.
Sorry, just on so I'm clear. So it's perhaps a table, projects, total number, and number of affordable. Would that be?
Yeah, the number of affordable. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, okay. Happy to do that. To your first point, the definition of what's affordable, we've been asked this a few times in various committees that I've attended, including the main board, and the answer is that we reflect what is in the local consent. So each site has a planning consent, and therefore the determination of what's deemed to be affordable in the context of that consent is what we are responding to. Now, there are definitions of what is affordable, and there are many forms of it, so shared ownership would be one of them, social rent would be, you're going to hear a number of them very shortly from our colleagues at Homes England. It's not our job to register what is affordable, and indeed you'll see, if you read the papers, you'll also see that a number of the schemes are delivering significantly more affordable housing than the schemes were originally required to do as part of the planning consent. And that's because the developers made a conscious decision there, or the registered providers made a conscious decision to deliver homes of that type of category. So we don't set any definitions of our own, we use those that exist already. And in planning terms, in strict planning legislation terms, affordable housing is defined, and we, you know, reflect that definition. But the definition and the perhaps what's behind your question as to what do we treat as affordable sits with the local planning authority. Does it meet their standards? Does it reflect their local needs analysis? Does it form part of what they would routinely look for when development proposals are put in front of them? That's where the answer to that question really sits. But again, I'm happy to circulate the sort of legal definition of those component elements of affordable housing. But it's not a judgment that EMCCA makes in that piece. If it fits the fund, then it will get the support of the fund. The definition of what is affordable and what is not is determined by law. It's set out and prescribed. I think EMCCA's approach generally is we would support the delivery of all forms of affordable housing because we need to see more of it, and there's a critical shortage of it. So as a general presumption, it doesn't become a policy mandate, as we've said earlier on, but it becomes something that we're very keen to foster and encourage through our leveraging activity and the soft power of the Mayor.
Very clear, thank you.
Just to give my authority as an example, we've got a local plan that we regularly refresh. We've had one ever since that came into legislation a long time ago now. But we also have a housing strategy that we've adopted, and that's been developed within our housing market area as well. So it's the measure of what affordable housing is a very narrow one compared with really needing to get to grips in your housing strategy what it is your community need, and quite often people will come forward with schemes, and we'll say to them, well, sorry, but actually all our statistics in our housing strategy show that we don't need that. What we do need, we usually give them a close approximation to what they want to do. So we really wouldn't want to be tying our local planning authorities and to something that's quite a narrow definition. Councillor Woodington, you indicated you'd like to come in.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up Councillor Brazier's point about when schemes drop out and the criteria that people need to get to before they, or developers for example, need to get to before they get to a scheme, because I do think it's the right thing to put a deadline on, you know, they call it spades in the ground, like you've got to start on site before a specific date, and there has to be a genuine commitment to go forward on that. But I'm assuming that it would be you're having regular meetings with developers so that if that trend develops, we'll be able to speak to them and understand exactly what the issues are. And I suppose a good example of that was during COVID, where work had to stop on sites for quite a good few months, didn't it? And then by the time it resumed, we had construction companies going out of business. All of the costs of supplies had increased as well, and then you're looking at a different financial envelope with extra permissions and authorities needed on it. So I wonder if that's actually what is being thought about, as far as if we do end up with an emerging trend of schemes not being able to start on time and being and dropping out, that there's some sort of analysis as to what actually happened here, and you know, is the time frame a reasonable time frame?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit to unpack in that, but I think that what I understand your question to be is about those behaviours that sit pre and post contract. Then, from a developer perspective, let's deal with them pre-contract. So prior to entering into a contract with EMCCA, they've got to have a planning consent. They've got to have either let or about to let their building contract. And appended to the grant agreement, the third element of that is they need a milestone schedule, which basically says we're going to start on X, by X date we'll have reached this stage, by Y date we'll have reached this stage, and there'll be a completion obligation to do that. Now, depending on what the funds have been used for, the ability to draw the funds down in that period would be when they make the claims to EMCCA to support the funding. But there's an obligation in the agreement to get them to do it. So in other words, you don't get it and we hope that you'll build it, you get the money because you're contracting to build it within this time frame. Because it's a legal agreement, I can then talk about the behaviours post-contract. So before we enter into the agreement, that's what we think they're going to do. Now, the fund requirements need a start on site before March 27. What that means is a very specific start on site. Again, there's a legal definition for that, but that's not a sort of, well, we've kind of put a van on the site and we put a fence around it. It means you've actually got to start development and done something appropriate. And it's usually judged by the first foundation that goes in. So all well and good. We think they start when they say they're going to start, and the development programme goes according to plan. But development is a messy, difficult, unpredictable business, and sometimes stuff gets in the way, like COVID, or market crashes, or material costs escalating, or labour supplies dwindling, or construction companies that are supporting the schemes find themselves in financial difficulty. And therefore, all of the agreements have a degree of reassessment within them that should you fail to meet those timetables, then you have to undertake to agree with EMCCA what you are going to do to try and meet them. And I think, without getting too sort of legally technical about it, I'd just apply a test of reasonableness. So, I was, during COVID years, responsible for a very large number of developments, and the world stopped during COVID, so it wasn't unique to a developer. And the organisation I was with at the time had to shape its response to what was a market that was good, functioning fine one day, then no longer could function at all, but it wasn't functional on any level. More commonly, you see market trends where developers either can't get materials, therefore have to pause things, or have an issue on site because what they thought they were developing, they found something under the ground which makes it more expensive and more timely, or more difficult. A piece of infrastructure that needs to be put in that hadn't been thought about when the scheme was designed, all of which add to the timetable, or just that it's just taking so long and we just can't get there. Now, those are all what we would call regular development behaviours, and our opportunity with EMCCA is actually to deploy the fund, because we actually want to see these homes built. We don't want to see an allocation of money to them, we want to see them built, because that's what it's there to do. So wherever possible, we'd support the developer if the ask was a reasonable one. And by that I mean if it was an unforeseeable situation, or they've been very open and transparent with us about what's caused the delay, then we try and help them through that process and see them through it. There are situations where we can't help, where, for example, the developer might go into administration and cease to exist, in which case, whilst we have security on the money that's been expended, doesn't get the units built, and we look for a recovery situation there. I think where you have global events, so I would probably describe COVID as a global event, it's often kind of regarded as like force majeure kind of provisioning, which is nobody could have anticipated there'd be a worldwide epidemic that would, stop everybody working on a building site, overnight. But that's exactly what happened. So what followed from that was a working practice aligned with government recommendation and advice, which meant that development could take place after a while, but it was taken on a much slower timetable and with much more regulated environments for safety of the workforce. And again, in those situations, EMCCA would take a broad and reasonable view about what was appropriate. So to get the money in the first place, you have to contract to do something, is the answer to the question. If they don't do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it, then we have regular checks and balances that measure against those milestones, and ultimately we have the ability to withhold the money from them ultimately if they don't meet those milestones. But with the absolute presumption on our part that when we contract with somebody, we're expecting them to be bona fide, do what they say they're going to do, and fulfil the contractual obligations that we give to them.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments?
I've just got one final point. I think the bit in the middle of this doesn't square the circle, shall we say, is what we define as affordable housing. In my view, affordable housing is what somebody can afford to buy it for. Social housing is what somebody can afford to pay the rent on. And the third part is what the developers can make profit. And I think EMCCA need to do a little bit more work on that, because it's all right building nice social housing, shall we say the rents are $950 a month, and the tenant who come in can't afford $950 a month. I think a little bit more work needs doing on EMCCA need to do on that. And then you look at the final point on the sites that have stopped for reasons. People have been and put a bid in, and they didn't realise there was a pumping station there. They didn't realise there was a buildings one knocking down. Well, surely they knew that when they bid for it. I mean, that's just.
Well, unfortunately, they seem to not do.
Yeah, well,
especially overseas buyers who.
Well, surely EMCCA should have a, be more stringent. And if people do come on with this, there's a penalty to pay. Because not only have they wasted your time, they wasted other developers' time who perhaps have lost interest by then.
Yeah. Well, so again, there's three parts to that question. Really, the first part is we wouldn't enter into contract with them if we didn't think they were bona fide and appropriate and could
but if
deliver
they didn't
within
know
the
there was a
milestone.
pumping station, then they'd bid for it.
But there are two. So the second bit of the question is that there is a regulated sector and an unregulated sector. The regulated sector that delivers social housing or affordable housing is generally delivered by the registered provider. Now, they have certain codes of conduct, they have their own operating requirements, and they deliver at different segments of the market, so they don't all do the same thing.
You mean the developer when you say that?
No, I mean the affordable housing provider, so a housing association
Not metropolitan
or a
or
registered
whatever,
provider, that's right. The unregulated bit of that is the private development sector, which is a function of the market, and that is about somebody saying, I will give you X for a piece of land, I'm going to develop it for X amount of homes, and I expect to sell them for Y. Now, that is a hugely competitive market, and it's not regulated by EMCCA, and it's not EMCCA's place to regulate that market, it just is a function of what is. We don't control the land, we don't own the land, and we can't attribute value to it through our actions through that process. That starts with the planning process and the allocation of the site for certain uses within that, and what follows from that is the value attribution that either the landowner or the developer puts on it. Now, if a developer starts a site and stops because the market's awful, I'm afraid that's the market. That's just the way the stop-start ability of the sector to respond to changes in the market. Generally speaking, when the market's going really well, they want to build as fast as they can and sell as quickly as they can to get the revenue back. When the market's really poor, they'll slow the build down to the lowest possible rate, or in some cases stop altogether if the market's vanished. But in both cases, the developer makes that call, and it's a careful call, because if they stop, it means it's costing them money every time nothing is sold on the site. So they tend not to arrest development or stagger it if they can at all help it. There are circumstances in development where you simply don't know until you start developing what the costs are. So you can do a site investigation on the site, and you can deliver 100 trial pits, but the one trial pit you've missed is the void underneath it, which is going to stop you for 3 months to dig out and take a tank out. You can start a conversion of a building, but you won't actually know how good the timbers are until you've ripped all the fabric of the building out and you realise you've got to replace them. Now, sometimes they come as absolute game changers for developers, and they have to stop altogether because they just can't finance what it needs to follow next. And other times they have to raise the finance, and you get this sort of stop-start lurching effect that goes with it. I think EMCCA's job is to let the market do what the market does best, but we can work best by supporting all elements of that department, the market, whether it's the affordable housing section, affordable housing providers, or the social housing providers, or the RPs sectors, or the local authorities that are delivering homes directly. We can support them as much as we can. We can equally support the private sector developers who are selling homes for sale. The point of affordability, though, is back to that reflection about the market. And so developers generally, because they're led by profit returns, will develop the most market efficient product. which might be affordable in their sense, but might not be affordable to the median incomes of the area that it's been constructed in. But that is, you know, again, those are matters which are market functions and not really. They're certainly not matters that I think EMCCA would wish to intervene in. But where EMCCA can offer a positive influence to shape is to, one, deliver more, so build more homes of all types, certainly shape the quantum of delivery for the affordable housing sector and our work, as you'll hear, with repeatedly with Homes England, but also through our own good offices. And where developers are encountering difficulties is transport them through that process, through the regulatory burdens that some of us control leave us on if you're a local authority or you're in control of building regulations. But the actual function of the market determines what's affordable and what's not, other than the bit which is social housing, either for rent or for sale or for shared ownership or for any other version of it.
Thank you. Right, I think we better move on. And but I think this discussion has shown the great deal of interest that we've got in delivering social and affordable homes, which is sort of right on cue for our colleagues from Homes England, who are going to talk to us about their social and affordable homes programme, which is going to operate over the next 10 years.
I think this is going to come on. Do we need to turn that on? Is it gone to sleep?
That's gone to sleep.
We need to do tax solution here, that's a low tax solution, terribly good. It took a moment to warm up earlier, didn't it?
Just if I may, just as a bit of a filler while we're waiting for the tech to load up, I think this next item, clearly from the committee discussions today and previously, this priority, the weight given to affordable housing, social housing is very, very clear. This is the main route by which we're going to deliver it in the region. Yeah. And so it's part information so that we know about it, but also what is our role, what's your role, the role of your councils and of EMCCA to make sure we get the absolute maximum from this funding over the next 10 years. That's kind of what this is driving to.
Can people see? Do we need to?
Turn the lights off.
Yeah, we can turn those lights.
Is that, if we turn the lights off, is it going to be okay for the...
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you for letting me talk to this committee. The Social and Affordable Homes programme was launched back on the 7th of November, and there were some really big headlines that were launched with this programme. And it sits alongside the government's long-term strategic plan to deliver a decade of social and affordable housing. And the Social and Affordable Homes programme is the first step of a 5-step plan from the government to deliver renewal in social and affordable housing. And obviously we've been given 39 billion, the sector has, of which 27 billion will be for Homes England to deliver affordable housing. We've also got the other step on the plan is about rebuilding the sector's resilience and capacity to borrow. Not yet. Hold on. And then I think the third step on the plan was to establish an effective regulatory and stable regime. I'm going to talk a little bit about in this presentation about reinvigorating council house building as well. And then we want to forge renewed partnerships with the sector to build at scale. And those renewed partnerships, which is why I'm here today, is with the combined authorities and those that RPs and developers, so that we can get the houses in the right place at the right time. Thank you. So the affordable Social and Affordable Homes Programme, and we love an acronym at Homes England, as everybody probably knows. We've got a SAP programme, we've had a SOAP programme, we've had an AHP programme, but this is now a SAP programme, Social and Affordable Homes Programme. £27.3 billion come to Homes England. We're going to deliver 60% of that as social rent. And that's a key driver for this government and the commitment to delivering the 300,000 homes across the Homes England area and the GLA. We've published a timeline for our programme, so it was launched in November. We're going to start our contracting process in December or this month. But we're also today starting a series of roadshows with key stakeholders, I have to say, completely oversubscribed, up and down the country, and we're delivering a presentation almost similar to this, but I will circulate it to this committee if you want to have a look at it, to see some of the details of the programme. Bidding will start in February, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we can pay the grants from the 1st of April. But we have to start now so that we're out of the blocks and we can start to deliver on the government's objectives. The next slide, please. While I talk about wider strategic objectives, I will sort of tailor them down to the EMCCA area, but you know, it's not rocket science. Two main objectives: maximise delivery of social and affordable housing from out of the 1.5 million in this Parliament, and maximise the delivery of social rent. And then I sort of did mention that we were going to focus on a few areas. So council house building, we've recently supported MHCLG to provide revenue support to councils to ramp up their resources so they can actually do direct delivery with Homes England and not just reliant on RP's delivery. And we did have, I think it was one local authority in the EMCCA area that benefited from the council house support fund. We're also going to we also want to have objectives around building specialist and supported housing. And I was interested in the comments from the councillor here about adaptive homes, specialist homes, etc. And then my other colleague, Henry, talked about community-led, and we've got community-led and rural as our wider objectives. So we will be looking to make sure that we engage with the sector to make sure the programme does include a balance of council house building, specialist accommodation, community and rural-led housing. And particularly when I talk, particularly when I talk about specialist housing, whilst I know we haven't got any numerical targets, and we usually do, we usually set out ourselves lots of targets in the programme and then things happen. So in our last programme we had COVID. If anybody remembers the tanker being stuck in the Suez Canal, everything affects the delivery of housing, believe it or not. And so we haven't set any numerical targets, but we will be guiding our bidders, who are usually mainly registered providers, local authorities and some developers, to deliver the specialist parts of our programme. You know, we do recognise that the social and affordable homes programme needs to be as diverse as possible. I'm just going to whiz down to the next slide. That's a little bit more detail, because it talks about the client groups that we want to support, but also the tenures that we're going to support within the programme. Social rent, 60% of the programme. Affordable rent, which I know Councillor Walker Gurney mentioned earlier. We've got affordable rent in the programme as well, which is up to 80% of market rent. We will have, for older people, we'll have older persons shared ownership. We also will have shared ownership for general needs, and it's not been mentioned much, but we do also do a rent-to-buy product as well. So all of those will be included in the programme. This is a very busy slide, and it is not for me to read through everything, but for you to have a read at your own leisure. But we did also talk about accessible and adapted homes, designated supported accommodation, all designed around meeting local needs. And I couldn't do a presentation without talking about regeneration, because regeneration was the thing that was not included originally in the 21-26 programme, and we did bring it in, and it has been extremely successful. We look for things around demonstrating that we're not just replacing one for one, but looking at additionality and measuring that additionality. And it doesn't always have to be additionality in terms of homes. It could well be in terms of sustainability, environmental standards, all of those things. But we are encouraging our partners and our local authorities to talk to us about any of those regeneration priorities that may emerge from your local plans and your local discussions. Design and sustainability. Most affordable housing goes for people who are in the most need, and so therefore we demand a high standard of accommodation for all people who have no choice really. So we do like our partners, we do want our partners to think about meeting the minimum standards and exceeding those standards where possible, looking at making sure that homes meet the nationally described space standards, they're assessed against building for a healthy life, and supporting local strategic ambitions, which myself and my team and Barry, we've talked about high-level strategic priorities for the EMCCA area. So there's no point just mandating wider strategic objectives if we're not meeting local needs and homes in the right place. So that is why we're fully engaged with EMCCA and the local authorities in the EMCCA area to deliver on their ambition. And my job and my team's job is to help to steer the registered providers, the developers who are working in your area to deliver on your priorities, and we, myself and my team and Barry, we've talked about setting up an RP forum just to make sure that they understand what those high-level priorities are for the EMCCA area. And I'm pleased to hear that sort of EMCCA are working on their draft housing strategy, which will set out its objectives. Funding routes. Oh, right, great. Oh, you're with me. Well done, Batman. Thank you. I just wanted to just mention that there are 120 registered providers working in the EMCCA area, of which 44 have accessed our programme, our last two programmes. 17 of them are strategic partners, and strategic partners have more flexibility around, they get an allocation, and then they can apply that allocation to sites that they have commissioned themselves. The route that I actually work on is I work in both routes, but we concentrate often on the scheme by scheme basis, which we call CME, or continuous market engagement, where providers bring us schemes, they talk them through, and we assess them on for value for money, deliverability and strategic fit. And I think that we've tried to make the routes as easy as possible in terms of bringing forward either scheme by scheme, particularly through CME, or a portfolio which has been quite welcomed by a number of local authorities across the Midlands at the moment, where many local authorities need the certainty of Homes England's grant funding in order to bring forward a small number of sites. So we're looking to, as a growth team, we are the front door for new affordable housing. If you've got ideas that you want to bring forward, do talk to us. I'm not going to read this slide, but I think the first box is the one that I think highlights how we're going to progress going forward. And this slide, all these flexibilities have always been available to Homes England but I think we've been a bit more transparent about the flexibilities we have within the programme to help to bring schemes forward. But I think the first box sums it up really, that we'll allow higher grant rates for bids that are closely aligned with strategic priorities and can demonstrate additional delivery costs. And they're not just linked to design and sustainability, but it's linked to making building it on that broader strategic priority outlined in the programme. So it's what your priorities are. If you've got a site that is really difficult to bring forward, we will be expecting yourselves and the RP or whoever's delivering it to be talking to us. So it won't be just a conversation between us and whoever's bidding. It will involve yourselves and the local authorities as well. Next slide. Let's see what I've got on the next one. I think I might have covered this slide already, but these are three assessment criteria, and the strategic partners have a slightly nuanced one, because each strategic partner has their own internal rates of return and all of that stuff, so they will have a pocket of money and they'll have to deliver against it. But when you're bidding on a scheme by scheme basis, it is grant per home, it is strategic fit, and it is deliverability. And if you keep those three things in mind, that's how we assess bids going forward. And I think I'm coming up to my last slide. For any of you who've been here as long as I have, I think IMS was invented in 1999. It has now come to the end of its life, and I'm very happy to see the end of it, which is it. You can imagine what it was like in 1999. And so we've now got what we've got, what we're calling core AHP, and it's much easier. You really don't need a manual. It's very intuitive. So we're looking forward to having a new system to launch the new programme with. I've cantered through that, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions? I'll let Edward.
Sorry. You hinted at some of the fund being available for regeneration.
I didn't hint. I didn't hint.
I don't think it was quantified.
Oh, right.
So I wonder if you could just clarify that a little bit around, does that mean older homes will be regenerated, brought to modern standards as part of this fund?
Don't know, yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
and I think that's the truth, because I think the thing is, the devil's in the detail. So we've got to release a final bit of information around what the bidding process went before we launch it in February, and those details will come out. But in terms of, are you thinking about things around retrofit? Or
yes, yeah. So older homes that maybe don't meet modern standards for sustainability.
Normally, I think in the past what we have done is it's been where homes have been unfit for purpose, to be honest, and probably need to be demolished and rebuilt. Okay, retrofit has been a slightly different, has always operated in a slightly different programme. Often it's been a separate programme maybe that MHCRG might bring forward, but we're not aware of one at the moment. So we will, consider what you want to have. If you've got a regeneration proposal, let us have a look at it and we can talk it through.
The other thing was that you mentioned a .gov.uk page to replace the IMS system. Is that available now? Or
not yet.
Is there a time?
February.
February. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Woodings.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm not going to steal your questions, Councillor Walker, again. I just wondered if you could elaborate more about the energy efficiency standards that you would expect from new homes. It talked about standard L there. I don't really understand what that means, but what makes a home affordable is not just the cost that you either rent or buy it at, it's the fact that it's an energy efficient home which is really easy to keep warm and cheap to heat, and sometimes building that little bit more of insulation in the walls, or having solar power panels fitted as standard. I also saw a really interesting presentation a couple of years ago about what they call solar efficient housing, which is quite relevant considering we had 4 heat waves this summer. It's about houses being built in the way that maximises the warmth of the sun in winter and minimises the heat from the sun in the summer and when we get heat waves as well. And obviously we're having to move to heat pumps as standard as well. So I just wondered, I appreciate all of those things can add cost into a per unit price, but that home is more likely to be, as I say, affordable for the individuals who live in them for longer, because their energy bills would be massively reduced. So they're more likely to be able to, if they're renting, for example, to carry on renting their home, and they'll have more disposable cash available as well. And I do have another question after this one.
We have included in the current programme a number of schemes that have exceeded the minimum requirement for energy efficiency. I mean, I think currently we're only specifying the minimum requirement, but RPs have, and particularly in the East Midlands, have led the way in developing those that go beyond those minimum standards, and there are many examples in the East Midlands that, and I think I went to one a couple of weeks ago with names, EMH Housing, and it was super energy efficient, where the end user would be very, their bills would be very low, and then I'm sure it didn't even have gas air source heat pumps in there. I can't remember what the energy they were using, but it was absolutely, it was superb. And I think RPs are taking that on board, particularly where they are in charge of the development, where it is designed and land led. That's where we're seeing it happen. So there are a number of the strategic partners I'm aware of that are taking that on board, and a number of them are not accepting anything below those high energy efficient standards.
Thank you.
And not developing anything below that.
And my second question is about, obviously, in certain areas there's actually, the brownfield sites are, for example, are very challenging. I mean, there are sites in my ward where they're designated as available for housing, but they actually have really high groundwater. So you need massive remediation in order to make that work. But I was reflecting last week about the fact that if you're a private homeowner and you have a bigger family, you need to move, you might get an extension, and we see that the requests for extensions on houses since the planning regulations were freed up, and people converting their attics and landlords converting their attics and things like that has become the norm. And I wonder if Homes England will ever sort of consider, as far as because all of that takes capital to do it, but it means to say that somebody, say for example in a council house with their children at a local school, who've got all their transport plans worked out, don't have to think about moving if their family extends, or if they need to bring in an older relative and look after their elderly relative to care for them as well. If that's anything that the government has been thinking about, or Homes England have been thinking about, as far as actually expanding the capacity of homes that we already have, which feels would be a relatively reasonable cost benefit to it, because it doesn't take as long to actually expand a home than it does to actually build from new.
Right. The programme that we run is for new affordable housing. If it's existing homes, if it's existing properties that RPs are then own, it would be for the tenant to speak to their landlord about it if they want to extend the home. It wouldn't fall under the remit of Homes England, because we would just be building the new home, and then the ownership and management and the retention of the grant would sit with the registered provider. So it's a conversation that we could have with the registered providers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, I've got James. Henri, I'm afraid I can't bring you in. I think you were indicating, but the Constitution doesn't allow that in this part of the meeting.
One comment and a question. Nottinghamshire County Council have a housing strategy that we're currently working with districts and boroughs, and we'd be keen to work with Homes England as well on if we could try and set something up, maybe to get some more support. And then just a question is the programme doing anything to help with homelessness and getting homeless back into permanent accommodation?
When I talk about specialist housing, it includes the whole remit. So it does include things like homelessness, move-on accommodation. It doesn't include temporary accommodation, so we don't fund temporary accommodation, but we do fund move-on from temporary accommodation into what we call move-on. It's the next step from temporary accommodation and into permanent homes. So yes, it includes. I think my slide doesn't include all of the groups that we support, but this programme does support them. I'll just say that in the previous programme we have managed the homelessness programme for MHCRG and allocated all of those funds for what we call the Lost Sleepers Initiative programme and whatever we have that many acronyms, I've forgotten what they are, but we've had run two very successful programmes during the 21-26 period on behalf of MHCRG. Brilliant, thank you.
Derbyshire Chairman.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
He's been looking at my nose.
Firstly, if I can support Councillor Woodings, which was saying about affordable homes. Yeah, it's really important. It's not just the purchase price or the rent. It's the cost of occupying. But also the external costs. So, using my personal experience, the village I live in, there've just been fields full of houses built, not connected to the local community. It's a small village and very much car dependent. And local school within a few hundred yards, but people driving to it because facilities haven't been put in place to walk to school. And also creating housing needs to be to form a community. You want employment, you want shops, you want facilities around them. I would say not isolated, like I say, a field full of housing. The question I've got was you did mention rural housing. Could you expand on that, please?
Rural housing. Where do I start?
Right.
I have been the rural leader for the Midlands for quite some time,
Yeah.
so it is an important part of what we want to see delivered. I know that these Midlands are like the back of my hand in terms of rural housing delivery, and by default we seem to have delivered our fair share of rural affordable housing. So we do continue and have continued to work with all the rural providers in the Midlands, across the Midlands, to ensure that they do include rural housing delivery within their either their strategic partnerships or whether they come and talk to us separately. I fully understand how long it takes for rural housing to come to fruition. So, I'm celebrating the High Peak scheme that's taken me 10 years, from phase 1 that is. So we did phase 1 10 years ago, and it's only 9 homes, but it's taken 10 years, and it's coming out the ground now. So working with providers across the East Midlands to make sure that we do include rural and affordable housing within their programmes, and that won't go away.
Thank you. If we just follow up that, recognising that poverty does exist in rural areas, very much it's hidden. It looks like a prosperous area, but the Peak District, you've got the quite well-to-do people that are in the area, and holiday lets, and there's a shortage for local people. and it's really important to sustain those communities that we have affordable housing for keep local people in their communities.
Definitely.
I'm really encouraged to hear you saying how hard you work with councils in rural areas and registered providers to bring schemes forward, because I've got councillors from the Derbyshire Dales area in touch with me about what EMCCA is going to do about this, so and I'm meeting with them shortly, so I'll be able to mention your expertise and what you do. Thank you. Lee?
Yep, so mine's around the regeneration stuff. So at Newark and Sherwood we've worked with Homes England for, well, we're on a scheme that's taken 13 years so far, and we're only just about to get shovels in the ground. So I think the work around regeneration is vital. So the York Drive scheme in Newark, as I say, it's about 12-13 years now. There's been some issues in the past, I think, in terms of securing funding and then funding leaving, but we're in a real positive position now that thanks to the support of Homes England we'll be able to get more than like for like on terms of the social housing element of that scheme, by demolishing properties that are long overdue demolishing. And one of the key things that we're doing there as well, which I don't think we speak about enough, is that we're designing out crime with that scheme, and I think every housing scheme needs to really consider the designing out crime element, because that estate as it sits has a back alley behind every house that leads to next to nowhere, and it's so easy for crime to happen there, and that's how we used to build council estates. You know, everyone had a back alley down the back of the houses. So it's really welcoming that the regeneration stuff's going to go further. As part of what we as councillors look at, I'm just wondering if Homes England are putting any emphasis on developers to work with local education providers to ensure that a percentage of their workforce is either apprentices or people that are fresh out of college, because it's actually really difficult for young people to get onto that, and if an organisation like Homes England are sort of shouting it from the rooftops that we need to support these young people to get onto that career ladder, because for us we're not just looking at housing here, we're looking at the wider East Midlands impact, and I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't look to work with local education providers and local apprenticeship providers to support that work moving forward.
Usually, I mean, it wouldn't, it doesn't normally sit with Homes England for that. I mean, usually it sits with the planning authority, and there's often, I mean, I've read a number of sort of requirements in the planning documents that have been approved for schemes where it does sort of mandate the developer to ensure that they are engaged with local communities, with whether they're working with SME communities or the education sector as well, to get those either getting the school involved, the local school involved in terms of design, except when they're doing you know, the plan for real or whatever we used to call it back in the day. You know, you involve the local community, and I would say that would sit with the local planning authority to take that forward. But there's absolutely no reason why within you know the contract or the conversations that you're having with developers when you've got schemes on and you're looking for them to develop, that you can say that you need X amount of employment with local schools or engagement with local communities and engagement with SME builders and providers as well, no matter what that service is. Because you'll be surprised how many smaller organisations are involved in development.
No.
And I smile because that doesn't just mean putting a brick on the ground. It is about the local shop. It is about, you know, the local cafe. and it, you know, it's everybody's involved in a development, and I you know, over the years I've seen how areas have thrived just because of their engagement with what's going on, and that would happen more locally than be mandated by Homes England, and that is about engaging in the place. Most of, if the RP is involved, they'll be out knocking the doors and telling people what's going on and supporting anybody that's local and maybe impacted by any development going on.
This discussion did happen at the last EMCCA board meeting as well, because we took a strategy on skills and employment, and if any, and Chesterfield Borough's had a local labour clause in its planning consent since 2011, and we're always willing to talk to colleagues about how we develop that. We've created a lot of apprenticeships and jobs for our local economy as a result of that in the construction industry and the supply chain. So it's a very good point there about how it's, you know, house building is connected to the local, you know, our local growth ambitions and our inclusive growth ambitions.
Yeah, I just think it would be good for Homes England if they could say in 10 years' time that this 27.3 billion has led to, I don't know, 1 million extra jobs thanks to that funding being allocated.
It's certainly something councils can do in partnership with with Homes England, which is sort of the next point on the agenda. Are you wanting to speak, or is somebody over there?
No, I've got a question, if that's okay.
That's fine.
One of the members of the committee to go first. So, I mean, firstly, thank you very much for the presentation. So much of what we do around this committee is reliant on working well with Homes England. So it's great that you're here today, and hopefully you'll come to the committee again in future. It's clearly a huge opportunity, a lot of money over a long period of time. So the longevity is as important as the quantum. Really, that certainty in planning horizons is so important. It's our job to make sure the EMCCA region is maximising the opportunity of this quantum and longevity of funding. So you mentioned the 21 to 26 programme. I'm interested in your opinion about how the region performed in the previous programme, not from a scrutinising, not from a fair shares point of view, but more from a pointers to the future. How can we our job is frankly to get a disproportionate amount of this money into the EMCCA region. So what does good look like in that regard? Did we punch our weight in the previous programme, and if not, what might we as a committee, in your opinion, need to try and do to make sure we more than punch our weight in this programme?
I think a lot of affordable housing delivery has been about the opportunities that the RPs have found or been presented with, and the developers have found and been presented with. But I think we've got a chance now to turn that a little bit on its head, and you to tell, or to us around the table to say, look, can we point our energies at getting this bit done and that bit done, and we can sort of look at an implementation plan or a timeline for the things that are early wins and the things that are a little bit further down the line. And we've got time to plan for that now, haven't we really, in terms of it being a 10 year. So the early wins are the things that are already in train, aren't they? But it's then the things that you're thinking of 4 years from now, 6 years from now, 8 years from now. And there's some big schemes coming forward in the EMCCA area, but we've got some early wins already. We know that there's going to be quite a few things coming forward that have come forward in what we've called the bridge funding, because we've had some bridge funding into the 27 million already, which has all gone out the door, believe it or not. So there is an appetite there already to get engaged in this programme. So what I'd say is that the early wins are going to kick that off, but what we also need to do is to have that round table discussion with the developing RPs in the area to see whether how engaged they are in taking a lot of your sort of middle to longer term projects forward, and to look at those projects not just as don't think about RPs as just doing a social and affordable housing. They also do market housing as well, because some of them are ramped up to deliver very big sites, and so they can compete with developers as well.
Thank you. Right, if nobody's got any more pressing questions, I think that's a good point to end on, and thank you both for coming this morning. And I think this is going to be the opportunity for the start of a great partnership between us at all levels, which brings us nicely on to the strategic place partnership with Homes England. Thank
you very much. Yeah. So, we said at the last meeting we'd update members on some of the progress on the strategic pipeline work that we've got underway, and we identified that to you at the last meeting. I'm just going to talk very briefly about 3 sites that have specific actions against them following that discussion we had, which are Broadmarsh, the Infinity Garden Village project in South Derby, and also the Chesterfield-Staveley corridor. So dealing with Broadmarsh specifically, as we know, Broadmarsh is a key regeneration site for the city and the region, and enclosed within the agreement is a proposed collaboration agreement which formalises our engagement with the 3 parties that are engaged in the development of that scheme, which are Nottingham City Council, Homes England, and now will be EMCCA. We are actually supporting that scheme in advance of that collaboration agreement being signed, and have advanced a grant of 3.3 million towards the demolition costs by extending the Community Diagnostic Centre work and enabling that to be brought forward early. But the intention is that we'll formalise our arrangements through a collaboration agreement which is appended and can be debated, I think, in private session but not in public session, Chairman, if I'm correct. Which just sets out the basis of how we'll work together. Our expectation is we'll sign that shortly, probably the other side of Christmas, but certainly very soon. That sets out the governance of how decisions will be made, both from a strategic point of view in a steering committee and the day-to-day decisions from a working point of view in a working committee. Members can be assured that EMCCA will be fully represented on those committees at appropriate levels, and we look forward to delivering more. In terms of general timetable, I'm advised that the collected parties are seeking an agent to act on their behalf to procure a developer. The likelihood is the developer will be procured in the early part of 2026, with a view to really bearing down on the next steps in terms of advancing the master plan and the detail of that scheme, probably following the summer of 26. So very much in train, very much happening, very keen to make progress. The second scheme we mentioned is the South Derby Growth Zone, which comprises 2 elements really. One's the enterprise zone, which is one of the 3 enterprise zones for the combined authority, as well as 4,500 units, which was part of the original Garden Village settlement policy for Homes England, and one of 14 identified for the same. The project requires significant infrastructure work, and there is an award to support the junction and the road to the A50 through levelling up funding, which remains on offer. This piece of work is a bit of a jointly developed collaboration between the City Council, the County Council, and Derbyshire District Council, and will embrace all of the landowners within that quadrant of development. So not only the private sector partners that are doing the housing work, but also some of the commercial partners. The funding has been provided by Homes England, which is some revenue support for South Derbyshire specifically to update the master plan for that area, and its emerging local plan, which again scheduled following Reg 9 consultation period to be out in the autumn. It's intending that we'll use some of that revenue funding through a direct agreement with EMCCA to support a commercial assessment of some of the dynamics of how that road will be provided. So there is a shortfall currently, and there is a proposition about how that shortfall will need to be met. And this piece of work will really look in very close scrutiny at the mechanisms that will be available and quite how that will work from a developer contributions support, EMCCA support, local authority support, in order to bring that scheme to fruition. So it will bear down on some of the detailed Section 106 costs that are likely to emerge the site infrastructure requirements, and it will give very clear governance and guidance to support the work that's already been done. And then the third piece of work relates to the Chesterfield and Staveley corridor. So in the vision for growth for EMCCA, which members were updated on previously, the Canal Corridor Growth Strategy spans a number of areas, but has a series of interconnected sites within it. It's not one particular location as such, there are a series. And we've been working very carefully with Homes England colleagues, Chesterfield Borough Council and Derbyshire County Council, and have commissioned a regeneration and investment framework document which builds on the extensive work that's been done already in those areas to create an overarching strategy, if you will, a strategic narrative for how regeneration and growth can take place on the various individual sites that are in that strategy, but bringing them together under a collective ambition, and that how that will create that strong sense of place and placemaking by avoiding a series of disparate strategies that don't link with one another but coordinating it as part of a whole. We talk a lot in this meeting, and I've certainly spoken at length about the quality of design, the quality of placemaking. What does it feel like to live in a place, I think were the words I used, and that's exactly what this is driving at. There are some real opportunities in this area that can, you might regard them as low-hanging fruit that can be brought to fruition within some of those opportunities that were being referred to as being near-term. And so the work we're doing with Homes England there, with their support, will help inform that delivery strategy and link these key sites together. But the important part of this, and I just want to emphasise this as a key theme of the strategic partnership, that it's working with the partners, not doing it to the partners. So this is to some extent about reflecting EMCCA's ambitions and Homes England's ambitions, but most importantly it reflects the needs of the partners within the locations that have administrations within those sites and that look after the mechanics of it. So we couldn't do it without the support of colleagues within the district and counties, with the technical officers that are tasked with approving various elements of it. And we feel that that collective horsepower is something to be embraced, and these are good footprints for us to move forward with this strategic pipeline. I think I said last time in my overview that it's an agile process, and that is absolutely the case. As you will see from the report, there are a series of sites that Nottingham have brought forward to us which reflect some really important priorities from their perspective. They happen to be city centre based schemes that for one reason or another are not coming forward at the sort of timetable or pace that anybody would like. So we will assess them as part of the pipeline evaluation work that we have underway on a continuous basis, and obviously we're in continuous dialogue both with Homes England and with officers and members at Nottingham, and will advance those once they've had a chance to digest the detail of it. So I think that probably is a natural pause moment. I'm happy to take any questions on any of the detail of that.
Anybody got any questions? James?
So it's good to start to see progress, and thank you to EMCCA and Homes England for providing support for sites in Derbyshire and Nottingham City, Broadmarsh, Infinity Park and the Staveley Corridor. However, major Nottinghamshire SUEs, including Gampston, Topwick A and Towton, offer over 10,000 potential homes when combined and have not been referenced in current plans. I'd like to ensure that EMCCA and Homes England will offer the same level of support for developing frameworks and master plans for these Nottinghamshire sites to help get them going.
Okay, so Councillor Walker-Gully is correct that they don't. The sites that are identified are generally those sites for which there's an impediment to bring forward at the moment. And certainly in the case of a number of, I mean, Topic A is already in harness and therefore is in delivery mode already, so arguably may not need further intervention from EMCCA to make some elements of that happen. But I think you're right to identify, I mean, Gampston is a key strategic site for Nottinghamshire, which are absolutely spot on. And Towton and Chetwynd collectively in the area have been identified in the spatial vision document has been one of the key sites in the Trent Arc, so you can certainly seek assurance from us and we'll give that they would be considered in that context. There are a number of different landowners in that area, as you will well be aware. Some of those are public landowners, some of them are private landowners, and I think it's important those parties do combine and collaborate in how to bring them forward. I think I mentioned last time, but I'll just reiterate for clarity that there are over 200 schemes in that strategic pipeline, and we can't do everything all at the same time. There will be a degree of prioritisation of resources and activities, so we're trying to unlock those sites that we can bear down that initially have got some collective problems for us to help to resolve. I think that the sites that you mentioned will certainly be in that focus as part of the go forward, as well a number of others, and I think we'll respond appropriately to how best we can help leverage that and help with their delivery.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Right, well, thank you very much, Barry, for that update. That concludes the business for the public session of this morning's meeting. Can I just say that during the meeting I have received apologies from Councillor Radford. Unfortunately he's ill, that's why he wasn't able to attend. So can I thank you all for coming this morning, particularly our two Homes England colleagues. Thank you. And informally in the public session, I wish you a happy Christmas. But moving on now to item 8, which is the exclusion of the press and public. The Housing and Land Committee requested to consider.
It's just if we need to.